welcome to our October edition of Boox. Thanks for coming in and tuning in tonight. Tonight we are going to discuss Patrick DeWitt's 2011 novel called The Sisters Brothers. It was very well reviewed when it came out and won the Governor General's Literary Award and was nominated for a number of other awards, including the Rogers Writers Trust, Scotiabank Giller, and Man Booker Prize. This is a Western that is based during the California Gold Rush. It is the tale of two brothers, Charlie and Eli sisters, and they are going across sort of the country and on a job hired by the Commodore to be hitmen. So they are tracking down a man that they are supposed to kill, and there's a lot of comedy, drama, there's a lot of killing, and it was a really interesting novel. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the relationship between the two brothers. The dichotomy between those two characters was really interesting. I think Westerns are a fun genre that are almost unexpected. I pick up a book and I expect a genre, Western, to be a Louis L'Amour, this really just boring kind of cowboy read. And this is nothing like that at all. I know, right? I am sorry.
You're talking about.
Right, those sackets. So that's a really fun thing about this book, is it takes the idea of this old Western and really revives it. There have been a number of books in the past couple of years who have really done that. Some authors that have really taken that genre and revived it, and films as well. You look at Quentin Tarantino making a movie about Westerns, and you know it's going to be a good thing. But overall, I enjoyed this book, and I would definitely recommend it to readers to explore. How about you guys?
I really liked the book. I hadn't read a Western for a really, really long time. I grew up, my grandfather read Westerns all the time, Louis L'Amour all the way. My father reads them as well. So I'd read a few just to see what the fuss was all about, and it was kind of boring. But this one was not. It was a summer read for me, and I really enjoyed it. I sat and drank a beer while I was reading Western, so it was really fun. I really thought it was a fun book.
Yeah.
I read some Westerns when I grew up.
Wow, I didn't read Westerns, and I didn't know anyone that read Westerns.
So to be fair, my last in growing up was Sackett.
Yeah.
And so we had some Louis L'Amour the Sacketts, and I thought it was really cool, and as I was reading them, I'm like, oh, these could be my brothers. I wish my brothers were as cool. Just joking. I love you guys. So yeah, as far as this book goes, I enjoyed this book. I thought it was a really interesting, different type of Western. It was fast-paced. It was easy to read. There were definitely parts of it that I didn't love, which we'll get into a little bit later. But overall, I would give it, I don't know, what would you guys give it a star rating? I think I gave it on Goodreads a 4.
I think I did too, 4 as well.
Oh, I'm really harsh with stars. Like if I like a book, I'm going with a 3. Like this was a 3 for me. It was pretty good, and I would recommend it. And that, yeah, but like personal love is 4s and 5s there. So, yeah, wow, that's a whole nother subject of like.
Wow.
So there was as we started getting ready for this broadcast, I started, I always try and look into interviews of the author and different summaries and different questions that we can come up with to talk about on here. And some of the questions that Patrick DeWitt has answered in media interviews have been really negative, may I say. He was a little bit harsh. I don't think I'd want to meet that man on a dark, crowded street. But
especially if you didn't like his book.
Yes, because that is where my first question arises, is a couple of people say, well, I didn't like the ending, or I didn't like this, or what about this? And he has said, as I've read other authors say before, well, it's just the way it was. That's the way the story came out, and that's the way it was, and I couldn't change anything about it because it was real. And sometimes I have to say that's a bit of a pet peeve for me. When authors take these stories that they write for their readers, because you're not writing it for yourself. If you're going out and searching to be published, you're looking to be an author for readers, right? Otherwise you write in your diary. And then if you're not satisfying them, but yet you're just not willing to say, oh yeah, I could have changed that, or yes, maybe that would work better for readers. And I just don't really think that that's being very responsible as an author, and that bothered me when I started to look into it, which may have been why I got knocked down from a 4 to a 3, because that started to affect my feelings on how he wrote this book and how he regarded it and its readers as to how I regarded whether I like this book. How do you guys feel about an author's responsibility to their readers, and whether they need to think about those readers when they publish? And I'm really excited to hear your response, Leslie, because you are a published author. So,
well, I think for me, I don't think that a author has an obligation to do something specific with his book or her book, but I do think that they have an obligation to know why they did what they did. So I don't think if someone says, you know, was there a greater meaning, or what was the meaning of, for example, the Weeping Man? The frickin' Weeping Man. I hate the Weeping Man, because nothing happens with the Weeping Man. The Weeping Man comes, the Weeping Man goes, the Weeping Man comes back, the Weeping Man goes. And I know he's been asked in interviews, so what's the meaning of the Weeping Man? And he's like, well, there's no meaning. He just kind of showed up, and I thought I would bring him back later on in the book. And as an author, I'm like, but you created a character. Your character should have meaning. And every workshop I've been to, everything is always like, well, what's the purpose of this? And if not, then cut out the shaft, so to speak. So I kind of feel like there's a lot of authors writing really good work that isn't being published when you have someone that has written an okay book, and then it gets touted as this amazing new groundbreaking novel, which again we'll talk about a little bit later. But I do think there is some obligation to at least understand where you're going and why you did what you did, rather than just telling people, well, it's just that's the way it is. So what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, Leslie. Just one of the things that I love about books are those characters. You keep bringing up that character thing there, and to me, the characters have a purpose, and I have to be able to connect with them. And one of the reasons why I don't like Game of Thrones is because what happens to the characters? Anyway, but so I connect with the characters. So if there's a character in the book that has absolutely no relevance. Well,
which, just to clue in our readers, Shauna, Patrick DeWitt brings in a character 3 times. It's a man, he's dressed in black, and he's walking down the streets of these really like frontier towns. So like you can imagine like the buildings on the side and the boardwalks and the dusty roads, and he's crying. He's dressed all in black and he's crying. And Charlie and Eli have no idea, and he's really curious. They're curious about who is this man and what's he doing, and then they keep running into him. So, and we never get any resolution about this man who's walking down the streets across like the western U.S. that they keep running into him 3 times. So, yeah.
Okay, questions. Want to go to questions, girls? We have a couple questions here.
Wonderful.
So,
yeah.
okay.
So I will, before we do that, I'll just mention to everybody we want your questions, and so please give us as many as you want, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can throughout the evening. So just ask us on the comments and we'll see what we can do. So
if we don't get to you during the broadcast, we make sure that we'll go on to the Facebook feed afterwards and answer everyone's questions. So thanks for joining us.
All right. So we have a question here from Jean-Paul. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Maya, with regard to DeWitt's attitudes towards his readership, I'm curious as to whether you've read any similar responses relative to his other works.
I didn't look into... Patrick DeWitt released a book last year under Major Domo. I think I'm close
one.
there. Yes, completely departed. He writes differently each time, and no, I didn't see any responses about that similarly. And as for his first book, he didn't get a lot. I think the reason for that is Sisters Brothers got a lot of press due to these massive gold stickers that is on the front there. So there were a lot of interviews with Patrick DeWitt concerning Sisters Brothers. I'm sorry I do that. So I don't know if that's fair to hold him, like if that's just, I don't know, because now that I'm thinking about it out loud, I'm thinking if I went through like 40, 50, 100 interviews about one book that I had written and the same questions, maybe I would start to get a little bit testy. So that question actually has me maybe thinking I've been a little hasty in my judgment of a grumpy character. So.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say the same thing. I mean, ultimately, the reason he hasn't answered that is because he hasn't been asked questions about any other books. His other books haven't gotten press. They haven't been as popular. And for various reasons, I haven't read all of his other books, but I've heard other people talk about them. This one, I think, appeals to the mass media because it has really short chapters. The brothers are relatable. I know, Shauna, you were talking a little bit about relationships before.
I'll go to Jason's question here, though. But can't you have a character that just is, with no hidden meaning? I mean, can't a plum just be a plum?
Haven't you been to high school English class? No, absolutely not. No. That's actually a really good question because yes, I think you can have a character that is just a character,
and he has those. He
there's others.
Eli, Charlie
and Eli are the brothers.
Yeah, which one's which?
Charlie is the lead hand. Eli is the portly one.
So Eli does have. Sorry, everyone. Eli does have a number of encounters with some characters that are a plum. They are a character, they provide a bit to the story, and then you move on. The character has some growth, there's some change, it affects the path of the novel, but the Weeping Man doesn't have that. He's just there. It's like he's meant to make the reader curious.
Yeah, like he's got enough of mystery surrounding him, like, okay, what's going on here? How does that tie in? So it just, and maybe that's the ploy, is to keep you reading, to go, okay, what's going to happen with Weeping Man? And maybe that's all it is a ploy.
And that's why I don't think it's fair, because I don't think it's fair to put out a character that has, you can have secondary characters, but you should have them fully fleshed out, and there should be a reason for them to be in the story. So the women in the book that they encounter and have interactions with, they're just characters. You don't find out much more about them other than how your main characters react to them. But I would hope, and after reading some interviews, I'm not sure, that the author had some idea of what that woman's life was like before the brothers came along and what happened after, even if it didn't make it onto the page.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting relationships in this book.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of relationships, one of the reasons why I liked the book so much was the relationship between the brothers and how it evolved. To me, at the beginning of the book, it was very much about one brother, Charlie, being more dominant over Eli, and Eli being, having to succumb to Charlie's whims all the way through. But as the book progressed and Eli was exposed to more characters, like his horse, like the woman that he kind of fell in love with, it helped him to become more of a compassionate person. It allowed him to think that maybe it's okay to be compassionate, even though my brother gives me a hard time about it. So it started making him question his role in that relationship between the two. And that also made me interested in the relationship between the two. So that's one of the things that I really liked about the book, was that relationship and how it changed.
I would have kept reading the book for Charlie and Eli's relationship. Like, I would have kept reading their journey. I really did enjoy their journey and their relationship. It was definitely, that's the basis of the book. It's called The Sisters Brothers for a reason, right? It is about them. So that is also why I would give it 3 stars. It's just that relationship, how it changes. I think you can see a bit of yourself in both characters, which is always an interesting thing when you're reading. I read for characters. I think you said that as well. And there's one point in the book where Charlie overhears Eli in the bathtub, and he's bitching about Charlie. He's, saying that he's good for nothing and useless, and he can't wait to get rid of him. And it's really a wake-up call for him. For Eli, yeah. And he realizes, like, what am I doing, actually? He doesn't want to be doing this killing. It's not in his character, and he has just been good at being there for his brother and helping him out, but never enjoys it. And then when he realizes that that relationship, which he holds so dear, is just in his mind.
Yeah, it's not being received.
That really was like a completely new area for him to pursue.
See, and I didn't actually think this book was about the brothers. I know it's called Sisters Brothers, but I thought the book was about Eli, because I viewed Charlie as a secondary character, and how Eli kind of, I'm glad you mentioned, like, he was such a nice guy, and I think that's why I liked this book. He was a nice guy. He was good to everybody. You know, he found joy in the simple things. He was a very simple man. And, you know, tooth powder, great thing. You know, I'm going to learn how to brush my teeth all the time. And then he hears that from his brother. And I was devastated for Eli, because I thought, you know, if I had overheard my brother talking about me like that, I just would be so sad, and I think I was really sad, because I don't come from a family like that. I'm very fortunate. I have great siblings, so I was like, how could you say that about your brother? You're supposed to be, you know, like, and he was just so mean. And then in the end, Eli still takes care of his brother. Mm-hmm. And so it was all about, you know what, Eli was the hero to me of this story, and I didn't care about Charlie. I was like, you can go and die from losing your arm, if that, you know, I was okay with that.
He really pissed you off, hey? Just go and die of gangrene. You are mean. You're mean.
It's a reason. It's a reason. Go get gold poisoning.
It was kind of the karma I was going to get you kind of thing,
Yes.
right? So it was kind of proof of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I didn't hate him.
No, I didn't either. And I definitely felt that he was a character within his time as well. Like, he definitely fit that idea of a Western, you know,
for sure.
horse riding kind of guy, right? Like, yeah, so...
Drinking.
Yeah, he was all about drinking and whoring and riding his horse, and yeah, so...
Eli had to help him out every time, and...
Yeah, but then, is Eli... I don't know, like, why does he do that? Why does he keep helping him out? Is that a sibling relationship that it's just inherent? You can't not?
I don't know, and I'm curious. I don't know if any of the male viewers out there tonight have an opinion, because we are viewing this from a very female point of view.
True.
Brothers' relationships. Well, of course we know what brothers' relationships are like, because, you know, we're women and we know all about that. So I'm curious. So if anyone has comments or anything, we'll definitely share them. If you have any comments.
If you have any brothers,
pass them along. But
is he an Eli or a Charlie?
the other question that I had was about the awards. So this book won some awards. So we talked a little bit about the press that it got.
Yep.
It won a Governor General's Award. It was nominated for a Man Booker. It was touted as very, you know, groundbreaking Western fiction, and I do think it was a different take on a Western.
You could honestly say this was the biggest book of 2011.
Yeah.
Much like Girl on the Train was probably like the biggest book of, is it 2014 or 2015? Like, there's always one of those books that, you know, is everywhere. But in this case, it also was award nominated. So
yeah. So my question is, number one, do you think that it deserves an award? Number two, do you put stock in books that have awards and read them more so than a book that doesn't? Or does that push you away from? Because you know, that whole concept of the reason I feel this book was so popular was because someone said, oh, it deserves an award, and everyone said, oh, let's buy it and read it. And so then it becomes more and more popular, gets on the bestsellers list, and it's almost like a created fame. And then everyone feels that they have to say that it was good because of, well, it's an award winner. Of course I loved it. So what do you think?
So I actually must say that I almost stay away from award winners now, because there is that idea that they're going to be, I don't know, something life-changing. And I just find myself personally dissatisfied, and it's not because of the book. I think it's just because if you go in with an idea of what maybe an award winner or an award nominee should offer. But I will also say it's not just because of that. It's also because I'm not interested, and I don't often understand what is happening. to get that prestigious award. So I do struggle with them. I mean, and I pay attention to them. I work at a library, and so right now we are paying attention. The Giller's shortlist is out right now. There's 5 choices. And there's only one that I actually am interested in as a reader. As a librarian, I almost feel like I need to take a look at or read all 5. But I do agree, Leslie, that I think that it gets nominated, and then there's interviews about it, and then people start putting it on the bestsellers, and then those bestsellers are always at Costco for $12.99. So then, and then everybody gets rid of that bestseller, and it ends up at bookstores, and then people buy. So it is a bit of a circle that goes. And I mean, like we said, we did like this book. I do think it has merit and value. But one more comment about that too is that I worked at a bookstore back in my teens and early 20s. And so if you walk into Chapters or Indigo, those tables, they're paid for. Publishers pay for them to put those books there. And it's the same with certain books. So a publishing company will choose their top 10 titles of the year for that, part of the year, and they will put their money into color print marketing. They will put their money into press tours and author tours. They will put their money into copies given out to people so that they start getting the reviews in early. And so there is a little bit of something there for me that I try to keep in mind, and it's the same for actors or for other people that get press. There's somebody that is working behind that artistic genius and that artistic value that is making it become a big event in the world. And so I often just look at that with a bit of mistrust, and that's just my own going against the grain type of thing that I tend to do. So, yeah.
So one of our online viewers has asked, how do you feel this book compares to other award winners and nominees? And Shauna, do you have any?
Well, I was going to say, I liked the book, but I don't think, in my mind, it was award winning, because I've read other books that are award winning that really changed me because of how wonderful they were. And this one, to me, it was just a fun read. It was just a exploration into westerns.
But I think that would change if we were men.
Do you think
so?
Well, I do think that this was I think westerns in general, and that was a subsequent answer to that. How do you feel that it compares to other westerns as well? Westerns are usually written for men. Like they're not. That doesn't mean they can't be enjoyed by women. And I hate to gender stereotype, but it's true. And so I think something like Sarah's Key, you're gonna
yeah, it's a different audience.
You're gonna have
there
a
are
different
some, and
reaction to
because
it.
there is the book that comes to mind. That is award-winning, I'm pretty sure, and that changed me, because that sentence struck a chord within me, right? Like, that it changed me, is The Help. The Help by Catherine Stoddard. And it's a very female book, actually, so I don't know if a man would say that it changed him. But there is one scene in that book that my brain often returns to, that just really struck a chord within me, and yeah. But this didn't necessarily have that for me. So I don't know if that's, yeah.
And I don't think this was like a typical Western either. Westerns are very formulaic, you go
No,
out,
see, I don't want to put it in that genre.
Yeah.
It's based in the West.
It's
but it's not a
written in the
Western.
Old West, but it's not a Western. It's not like a typical go out, find the outlaws and beat the bad guys and save the girl and fall in love.
No.
It's its own story on its own, which is why I think it won so many awards, because it was different. So, and I do think that your book has to stand out in the crowd, and I think that deserves merit in itself as well. So we're going to wrap up fairly soon here, but if you have a few more questions, definitely put them through. Before we wrap up, I'll just maybe mention, before we go on to other questions, that next month we're going to be talking about The Magicians by Lev Grossman. And so if you have a chance to, no tells, don't. We'll talk about it next month.
Right, next month. Sorry. Yeah.
So that's on November 10th at 7 o'clock on the Pandora's Books Facebook page. So we'll
An interesting thing to do, I was going to say too, is if you've read the book already and you don't want to reread it, try and find the show, because I think maybe that might come up in our conversation. Is just because there has been a show made, season 1. It's going to be put out for season 2, and so I am interested in talking about the difference between those two different mediums for portraying artistic stories. So
yeah. So again, you don't have to read the book beforehand, but if you do, then that's great. You can ask us some questions. We'd love to have that.
And next week, what are we going to see from you, Shauna?
I'm going to talk about on YouTube, a little foray into a book called The 3-Day Road that I read recently.
Yeah, so we're going to try and...
Those books that changed me.
There you go, see?
There you go.
And that won awards, so...
Yeah.
But try and look at our YouTube page. We're going to try to each put up a video weekly. I think Leslie's going to take on Spooky Reads.
Spooky Reads.
And November 7th, I'm going to acknowledge what's happening beyond the Great Wall.
On YouTube,
and talk about a political read.
3-Day.
What were the hashtags today that I saw?
Don't even.
Ombre and nasty woman or something. Awards. But thanks for tuning in today. Like I said, Sisters, Brothers, as we start talking, I worried that we started sounding a bit negative. But I think we all really did enjoy reading it as a book, right? Do you know what I mean?
If I don't enjoy a book, I won't finish reading it. So I finished reading it. I actually enjoyed it all the way through, and when I was done, I said, people should read this book. So,
we do have a chance to sit down and talk about this together to prepare, and then we sit down here and we talk about it. And often, that does start to change, but as we start talking, I worry that we started sounding negative. But give it a read, and see what you think. He's definitely an interesting author, and so if you like something a bit different, it's a good one to try.
So I finished reading it. I actually enjoyed it all the way through, and when I was done, thanks for joining us.
Good night. So we do have a chance to sit down and talk about this together to prepare, and then we sit down here and we talk about it. And often, what does that go by so fast? I was like, what are you talking about? I looked at you like this. I was like, you started sounding right. Oh, she's right. Give it a read, and see what you think. He's definitely an interesting author, and so if you like something a bit different, it's a good one to try. So I finished reading it. I actually enjoyed it all the way through when I was done. We do have a chance to sit down and talk about this together to prepare, and then we sit down here and we talk about it. And often, what does that go by so fast? I was like, what are you talking about? I looked at you like this. I was like, you started sounding right. Oh, she's right. Give it a read, and see what you think. He's definitely an interesting author, and so if you like something a bit different, it's a good one to try. So I finished reading it. I actually enjoyed it all the way through when I was done. We do have a chance to sit down and talk about it together to prepare, and then we sit down here and we talk about it. And often,